Welcome to Biggest Spoilars, the destination for exclusive spoilers, latest updates.
In the courtroom following Rocco's censure, Rick told Sonny about making a deal with Turner, and Sonny lashed out at Justine for double-crossing his grandson. She tried to explain that Professor Dalton had come forward with fresh substantiation after she'd spoken with Rick, but Sonny didn't watch and wanted his grandson out on bail. Justine assured him that the state would oppose bail, but Rick was skeptical about trusting her, given her jest. In court moment. After Rick stalked off, Sonny informed Justine that Dalton was easily setting up Rocco, and she was falling for it. Justine claimed she was just doing her job, but Sonny combated that if she was, she'd be probing Dalton's claims, given that Rocco claimed he hadn't done damage to the lab. Justine wondered how sure Sonny was that his grandson was telling the verity. He declared that he knew his grandson, and he was a good sprat. Justine noted the prints that Dalton handed, and Sonny refocused out that the Bobbies had no way actually dealt the lab. He claimed that Dalton was hiding commodity and framing Rocco to keep it quiet. Justine admitted she wasn't happy about executing Rocco, but it was her job. Sonny argued that effects aren't always black and white, and occasionally the system fails. She assured him that Dalton's substantiation would be completely delved, and given that Rocco was a sympathetic figure, the jury might side with him. When she reminded him formally again that it was her job to make the case on Dalton's behalf, Sonny wondered if it was just that or if she was hoping to advance her career. At her law office, Alexis met with Felicia to go over the disquisition into Portia. She wondered when the croaker could have gotten Edward's gun, and Felicia revealed that Portia had visited Monica twice a week with sanitarium updates. Next, Alexis questioned what Portia's motive would be to shoot Drew and assigned Felicia with chancing that out so she could have further implicit suspects, in addition to Michael, to help produce reasonable mistrustfulness for Willow. Rick arrived to speak with Alexis, so Felicia said her farewells. Alexis remarked how surprising it was that Rick was representing Rocco, given how important Sonny hates him. Rick explained he and his family were making peace for their daughter's sake and suggested that he and Alexis do the same. He also revealed that he'd heard Danny and Charlotte were with Rocco in the lab, and he demanded them to come forward to help his customer. Alexis shut that down incontinently because Danny coming forward would be terrible for him, and she couldn't trust Rick's pledges that he'd cover her grandson. Rick tried enhancing the deal by helping her clear Willow's name by giving her another suspect, Portia. Intrigued, Alexis inquired why she'd have shot Drew. To tell the truth. Kai rushed to the gallery to check on Trina, who informed him that she wanted to tell her parents that they were at Drew's house the night the Solon was shot. He wondered what changed her mind, and Trina blustered about Jordan stealing her father down from her mama before noting that it was Drew who had created the strain between her parents. She believed that if she could assure them the blackmail substantiation was gone, that strain would vanish and they would stay together. Kai gently suggested that maybe the blackmail wasn't what drove her parents piecemeal, noting that without the substantiation, Drew hadn't come after Curtis and Portia in a while. So Trina began wondering what differently could be keeping her parents piecemeal, away from Jordan. Kai tentatively reminded her that they didn't see the shooter that night, and while Curtis had an justification, Portia didn't. Trina couldn't believe he was talking about the possibility that her mama, the croaker, had tried to take a life, and wondered if she indeed knew her parents at all. Kai assured Trina that her parents love her, so if she told them she was at Drew's that night, they might tell her the verity, adding, "And is that a verity you really want to know?" Baby talk. At the sanitarium, Portia was looking at a sonogram picture and cheering her future baby that effects would work out when Curtis arrived to ask about her scan. She hid the sonogram and reported that everything looked good. Curtis was agitated to tell everyone they were waiting, but she reminded him that her age meant the gestation came with advanced pitfalls, so she wanted to make sure the baby was fully safe before revealing it. Curtis commended to her that Stella had figured out that she was pregnant, but was more concerned about their divorce and hoped they would attune. Portia couldn't believe he'd suppose about staying together for the sake of the baby and revealed she'd seen him kissing Jordan the other day. Curtis apologized, but Portia understood that they had resolved up and he was going his own way, which was back to Jordan. Curtis argued that they didn't work as a couple, but they could still work as parents. Portia thanked him for the heads up about Stella, and Curtis was about to let her get back to work until he spotted the sonogram. She reluctantly handed it over and participated that it's too early to tell if it's a boy or a girl. Whoever they are, they're just perfect, he declared happily. He asked if he could keep it, and when she hesitantly agreed, Curtis walked out into the hallway, looking at the image and crying. Carly was drawing up a table at Bobby's when Lulu rushed by, frantic because Rocco had been charged with felonies that the teen swore he didn't commit. Carly prompted her to do whatever it takes to save her son because captivity would change him. Lulu revealed that she could prove that Dalton's claims about the vandalization were false if Danny and Charlotte came forward. She hoped that their evidence could help clear Rocco, but also stressed they'd just get in trouble themselves, and didn't want to do anything until she knew they'd be safe. She started crying as she apologized to Carly for what had happened back when Michael was condemned of killing Claudia. Dante and I were sure we were doing the right thing, she blubbed. We allowed. We knew what would be in that courtroom, that Michael would be okay. We were so wrong. Tearing up, Carly hugged Lulu, who claimed she couldn't be wrong again because Rocco has too important to lose. The condemn game. Gio and Emma arrived at the sanitarium looking for Dante when Britt appeared and seized Emma's arm, demanding to talk one-on-one. Gio offered to stay, but Emma assured him she'd be fine, so he got in the elevator. Britt informed Emma that she knew she was the bone who got Rocco to steal the crucial fob out of her bag, so it was her fault that Rocco was in jail. Emma argued that Rocco could make his own opinions, and Britt also realized that the interest that he'd shown in her since chancing out she was working for Dalton was all an act. Emma commended that Rocco does actually like her and wants to get to know her, so Britt assumed Emma had been telling him all the terrible effects about her. Actually, the first time Rocco ever asked me about you, I told him that he should get to know you for himself, Emma replied. And perhaps you'd changed from the bitch who threw my doll on the regale when I was a sprat. Jury's still out on that bone. When Britt continued to condemn her for putting Rocco in captivity, Emma declared she was done trying to make her feel more. As Emma walked down, Britt angrily told her that the coming time she wanted to come at her to do it herself and not use a child. Emma repeated that she was sorry, but Britt said that, as someone who has made a lot of screw-ups, occasionally and reason doesn't cut it, and you have to just live with the mistake. Dante ran into Brooklyn at the sanitarium and told her about Rocco's censure and how he'd been helpless as the Bobbies took his son to jail. As Brooklyn wondered how Rocco got involved in commodity like that, Gio got off the elevator and intruded to advertise, "It was me." He explained to Dante that he'd teamed up with Emma to get into Dalton's lab to prove he was doing illegal testing on creatures. He and Emma had signed Danny, Rocco, and Charlotte to help with a distraction while they broke in. But Dante refocused out that he and Emma hadn't broken in, his family did. Gio tried to explain that they'd called the whole thing off after Ned had his heart attack, but Dante plaintively noted that Rocco still went in his place, complaining that Gio should be the one sitting in a cell. Brooklyn tried to defuse the situation, but Dante got emotional as he informed Gio that Rocco would do anything for him. "Perhaps you don't give a damn about being a part of his family," Dante wrangled, "but all Rocco cares about is being a part of yours." As Dante was ranting at Gio for putting Rocco in peril again, Emma intruded to contend that the plan had been her idea, not Joe's. Also, Dante indicted Gio of deforming over his little family to impress a girl, and when he protested, Dante fumed, "You know what? Just get out of my face. Get out of my face and walk down from me, please. Please just walk down from me before I say or do commodity I'm gonna lament." Gio stalked off, and Emma followed as Brooklyn just shook her head. The slap heard round Port Charles. Liz had just finished voting when Laura arrived at the polling place with the bad news about Rocco. Nathan showed up to let Laura know he'd gotten Rocco settled in his own room at the juvenile detention installation. Laura criticized Dalton for this mess, noting that, in the morning, the professor had said nothing about the lab being defaced. Liz assured her the PCPD would not stop until Rocco was cleared, and Laura took a breath and excused herself to cast her vote. After that was done, Laura thanked Nathan for his help with Rocco and was about to snare lunch with Liz when Dalton paraded in and exulted about how it would be delicate for Laura to cover her grandson now that she'd lost the election. Laura reminded the professor that the votes hadn't been counted yet, and she didn't need to be mayor to cover her family. When Dalton teased that Rocco and Sonny could now change captivity stories, Laura lost it and indicted him of manipulating the situation. The other citizens in the room were watching, some recording on their phones as Dalton claimed he was the victim and Laura angrily declared, "No, you're not. You're a fabricator." Dalton indicted her of using her mayoral power to help her grandson grind, and when she laid into him about railroading an innocent teenager, he loudly wondered in front of all the observers if she was hanging him. Laura indicted him of faking the damage to his lab and promised to fight him with everything she had. When Dalton continued looking around the room during her rant, Laura cried, "Look at me," and slided him across the face to get his attention. "You're trying to frame my grandson for a crime that he didn't commit," she whizzed. "And I promise you, that wouldn't end well for you." But also Laura followed Dalton's aspect and saw all the assembled choosers, numerous of them recording with their phones, and her face fell. The air in Port Charles was thick with a palpable tension, a city holding its breath as the fates of its youngest and most vulnerable citizens hung in the balance. For the families entangled in the web of accusations, betrayals, and long-buried secrets, it was a baptism by fire. Some found solace in encouraging words and fierce loyalty, while others were met with the searing heat of angry threats. This was a day where lines were drawn, alliances were tested, and the very definition of justice was put on trial. A grandfather's fury and a prosecutor's dilemma. The sterile, echoing halls of the courthouse did little to contain the tempest of emotions following Rocco Falconeri's arraignment. The heavy doors swung shut, sealing the teenager's fate for the moment, but the real drama was just beginning in the corridor outside. Sonny Corinthos, a man whose very name was synonymous with power and intimidation in Port Charles, stood like a thundercloud, his dark eyes fixed on Assistant District Attorney Justine Larson. Rick Lansing, an unlikely ally given his venomous history with Sonny, delivered the news that curdled Sonny's blood. He had attempted to broker a deal with Professor Gregory Turner, only to be undermined by Justine's 11th-hour deal with Professor Dalton. Sonny turned his formidable glare on the prosecutor. "You double-crossed my grandson," he accused, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that promised retribution. Justine, professional but visibly flustered under the weight of Sonny's wrath, tried to explain the shifting landscape. "After I spoke with Rick, Professor Dalton came forward with new evidence, photographs of the damage. My hands were tied." Sonny dismissed her explanation with a sharp wave of his hand. "I don't care about your procedural red tape. I want my grandson out on bail. Today." "The state won't oppose bail, Mr. Corinthos," Justine assured him, but the words offered little comfort. Rick, his expression a mask of cynical distrust, interjected. "After her performance in there today, you're willing to take her at her word?" With a final, disdainful look at Justine, he stalked off, leaving Sonny to handle the situation. Once they were alone, Sonny moved closer to Justine, his voice dropping to an intense, conspiratorial whisper. "You have to see what's happening here. Dalton is setting up my grandson, and you're playing right into his hands. You're his pawn." "I'm just doing my job, Mr. Corinthos," Justine insisted, though a flicker of doubt crossed her features. "I have to prosecute the case based on the evidence presented to me." "Doing your job?" Sonny countered, his tone scathing. "If you were doing your job, you'd be investigating Dalton's claims instead of blindly accepting them. The police never even looked at that lab. Rocco swears he didn't cause that damage. Doesn't that tell you something? Dalton is hiding something, and he's framing a good kid to keep it quiet." Justine sighed, the weight of her duty pressing down on her. "How sure are you that your grandson is telling the truth?" "Completely and utterly sure?" The question seemed to fortify Sonny rather than challenge him. He drew himself up to his full height, his conviction absolute. "I know my grandson. He's a good kid. He's not a liar. Things aren't always black and white in your law books, Ms. Larson. Sometimes the system fails." And it's failing him right now. Seeing the genuine, raw fear in the powerful man's eyes, Justine's professional facade softened slightly. The evidence will be thoroughly investigated, I promise you. And a jury will see Rocco is a sympathetic figure. They might very well side with him. But when she repeated, for the third time, that she was merely doing her job, representing the state and Professor Dalton, Sonny saw a different motive. His eyes narrowed. Is that all it is? Or is this a convenient career boost for you? A high-profile case to put you in the spotlight? The accusation hung in the air, a poisonous challenge that questioned not just her actions, but her integrity. The battle lines between the Corinthos family and the district attorney's office had been irrevocably drawn. Webs of suspicion and desperate deals. Across town, in the quiet, book-lined sanctuary of her law office, Alexis Davis was weaving a web of her own. With her daughter Willow's freedom on the line, she was leaving no stone unturned. Seated across from her was Felicia Scorpio, their heads bent over a file detailing the investigation into Dr. Portia Robinson. The question isn't just opportunity, it's motive, Alexis mused, tapping a pen on her desk. We know she had access to Edward Quartermain's gun during her visits to Monica. But why would Portia want to shoot Drew? Felicia nodded, her expression grim. I'll dig deeper. The more potential suspects we can present, the more we can create reasonable doubt for Willow. Michael is a start, but we need others. Their clandestine meeting was interrupted by the arrival of Rick Lansing. Felicia made a discreet exit, leaving the two lawyers, and former spouses, in a room crackling with their complicated history. Alexis raised an eyebrow. It's surprising to see you representing Rocco, given Sonny's well-documented animosity toward you. Rick offered a thin, pragmatic smile. My brother and I are attempting a peace treaty for the sake of our daughters. Perhaps you and I could do the same. He quickly got to the point, his tone shifting to that of a negotiator. I've heard a rumor that Danny and Charlotte were with Rocco in that lab. I need them to come forward as witnesses. Their testimony could dismantle Dalton's entire story. Alexis's response was immediate and fierce, a lioness protecting her cub. Absolutely not. Putting Danny on the stand, in the middle of this circus? It would be devastating for him. And forgive me if I don't trust your promises to protect my grandson, Rick. Your track record with family is spotty, at best. Unfazed, Rick switched tactics, his voice dropping into a more conspiratorial tone. What if I could sweeten the deal? What if I could give you another suspect to help clear Willow's name? Alexis leaned forward, intrigued despite herself. Who? Portia, Rick stated simply. The name landed between them with the force of a physical blow. Alexis's mind raced, connecting the dots Felicia had just laid out. Why, she breathed. Why would Portia shoot Drew? It was the very question at the heart of a growing mystery, one that was simultaneously unfolding just a few blocks away. Daughter's doubts and a painful truth. At the hospital, the sterile environment offered no respite from the emotional chaos. In a quiet corner of the gallery, Kai, a steady and concerned presence, found Trina Robinson, her face a mask of anguish and determination. I have to tell them, Trina declared, her voice trembling. I have to tell my parents that we were at Drew's house that night. That we saw something. Kai placed a gentle hand on her arm. What changed your mind? You were adamant about staying silent before. Look at them. Trina cried, her composure cracking. Jordan stole my father from my mother, but it was Drew and his blackmail that created the crack in their marriage. If I can just assure them that the evidence is gone, that the threat is over, maybe they can find their way back to each other. Kai, ever the voice of quiet reason, gently challenged her. Trina, are you sure the blackmail is the only thing keeping them apart? Drew hasn't acted on it in weeks. Maybe the problem goes deeper. The suggestion hung in the air, terrifying and plausible. If it wasn't the blackmail, and it wasn't just Jordan, then what was it? Kai then ventured into even more dangerous territory. We didn't see the shooter's face that night. Your father has an alibi. But your mother. Trina recoiled as if struck. What are you saying? That my mother, a doctor, could try to take a life? Do I even know my parents at all? The foundations of her world were shaking, every certainty she held about her family turning to sand. Kai squeezed her hand, offering an anchor in her spiraling reality. Your parents love you, Trina. If you tell them you were there, they might feel they have to tell you the truth. He paused, his eyes full of sympathy. And is that a truth you really want to know? His question echoed the very fear that was crystallizing in her heart. Unbeknownst to Trina, just a few rooms away, her mother was grappling with a truth of her own. Portia Robinson was staring at a sonogram, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. It's going to be okay, little one, she whispered to the unborn child. Mommy will make sure of it. The door opened, and Curtis entered, his presence a mixture of concern and residual affection. Portia quickly hid the sonogram. He was eager, hopeful, wanting to shout their news from the rooftops. We need to be cautious, Curtis, Portia reminded him, her voice laced with a doctor's pragmatism and a mother's fear. At my age, this pregnancy is high risk. I need to be sure the baby is safe before we make any announcements. Curtis confided that his mother, Stella, had already guessed, but his greater concern was their fractured relationship. He voiced a fragile hope for reconciliation. Portia's response was sharp with the pain of fresh betrayal. Stay together for the baby? Is that what you think this is? After I saw you kissing Jordan? The image was clearly burned into her mind. Curtis offered a lame apology, but Portia cut him off. We're divorced. You're free to be with whoever you want. And it's clear you're going back to Jordan. We didn't work as a couple, Portia, Curtis argued, but we can still work as parents. We have to, for this child. As he was about to leave, his eyes fell on the corner of the sonogram peeking out from where Portia had hidden it. Reluctantly, she handed it over. It's too early to tell the gender, she said softly. Curtis stared at the grainy image, his eyes filling with tears of awe and sorrow. Whoever they are, they're just perfect. He asked if he could keep it, and with a hesitant nod from Portia, he walked into the hallway, alone with the picture of his child, his shoulders shaking with silent, conflicted sobs. A mother's terror and a painful echo. The fear for a child was a universal language in Port Charles that day. At Bobby's, the familiar diner usually a haven of gossip and comfort, was the setting for a mother's worst nightmare. Lulu Falconeri, her face pale and streaked with tears, rushed in to find Carly Spencer. They charged him with felonies, Carly. Felonies? Lulu gasped, clutching Carly's arm like a lifeline. Rocco swears he didn't do it. He's just a boy. Carly, whose own son Michael had been scarred by the prison system, felt a cold dread wash over her. She took Lulu's hands, her grip firm and her eyes deadly serious. Listen to me. You do whatever it takes to get him out. You fight, you lie, you beg, you steal. You do not let that boy set foot in a prison. It will change him. It will break him in ways you can't fix. Lulu, trembling, revealed the fragile thread of hope she was clinging to. I think I can prove Dalton is lying. If Danny and Charlotte come forward and testify about what really happened that night, but what if they get charged, too? I can't save my son at the expense of someone else's child. I can't make that decision. The weight of her powerlessness crashed down on her, and she began to sob, a raw, guttural sound of pure despair. I'm so sorry, Carly. For what we did to Michael. Dante and I, we were so sure we were doing the right thing. We thought we knew how it would go, that he would be okay. We were so wrong. We were so wrong. Carly's own eyes welled with tears, the old wound torn open by Lulu's anguish. She pulled the weeping woman into a fierce, protective hug. The past and present were colliding, a horrifying echo of a tragedy they were all desperate to avoid repeating. I can't be wrong again, Lulu whispered into Carly's shoulder, her voice cracking. Rocco has too much to lose. Shattered trust and the weight of blame. The hospital, a nexus of life and death, had become a stage for confrontations and confessions. As Gio and Emma searched for Dante, they were intercepted by Britt Westbourne, her face a storm of maternal fury and guilt. She grabbed Emma's arm, her grip tight. "We need to talk." "Alone," Britt demanded. Gio moved to stand his ground, but Emma, with a resigned sigh, assured him she could handle it. Once he was in the elevator, Britt turned her full wrath on Emma. "I know it was you," Britt seethed. "You're the one who convinced Rocco to steal that key fob from my bag. This is your fault. You put him in that jail cell." Emma, defensive but clear-eyed, refused to take the full burden. "Rocco makes his own choices. He's not a puppet." The pieces then clicked into place for Britt. "The interest he was showing in me, since he found out I work for Dalton. That was all an act, wasn't it? A part of your little scheme." "Actually, you're wrong," Emma retorted, a flicker of defiance in her eyes. "Rocco does want to know you. The first time he asked about you, I told him he should get to know you for himself. That maybe you'd changed from the bitch who threw my doll on the barbecue when I was a kid. Jury's still out on that one." But Britt was beyond reasoning. She continued to hurl accusations, the weight of her own past failures magnifying her rage. "You used a child to get to me. I'm done trying to make you feel better about this," Emma declared, her patience exhausted. As she turned to leave, Britt delivered her final, venomous blow. "The next time you have a problem with me, you come at me yourself. Don't you ever use a child again. Do you understand me?" Emma offered a final, quiet, "I'm sorry." Britt's response was cold and absolute, born of her own hard-won, painful self-knowledge. "As someone who has made more than her share of screw-ups, let me give you some advice. Sometimes, an apology doesn't cut it. Sometimes, you just have to live with the mistake you made." The words were a sentence, a condemnation that Emma would have to carry with her. Nearby, Dante's world was collapsing. He ran into Brooklyn Quartermain, his voice hollow with shock and helplessness as he described the arraignment, the sight of his son being led away in handcuffs. How did he even get mixed up in this? Brooklyn wondered aloud. It was then that Gio, fresh from his encounter with Britt, stepped off the elevator and delivered his confession like a gut punch. "It was me." He laid out the entire plan, his and Emma's righteous crusade against Dalton's illegal testing, the recruitment of the younger kids as a distraction, their noble intentions. But Dante was not listening to the rationale, he was focused on the result. "You and Emma didn't break into that lab," Dante pointed out, his voice trembling with suppressed fury. "My little brother did. In your place." Gio tried to explain that they'd called it off after Ned's heart attack, but Dante was beyond hearing excuses. "It should be you in that cell, not him," he spat, his pain transforming into white-hot anger. Brooklyn tried to intervene, to be a voice of calm, but Dante's emotions boiled over. "Rocco would do anything for you. Maybe you don't give a damn about being a part of his family, but all Rocco cares about is being a part of yours." As Dante railed against Gio for leading his brother into danger, Emma rushed to Joe's defense, claiming the idea was hers. This only fueled Dante's rage further. "So you screwed over my little brother to impress a girl?" he accused Gio, his voice cracking with a mixture of heartbreak and fury. He took a step back, his hands clenching into fists, a lifetime of discipline as a police officer warring with a father's primal instinct to protect his child. "You know what? Just get out of my face. Get out of my face and walk away from me, please. Please, just walk away from me before I say or do something I'm gonna regret." Under the weight of Dante's devastating condemnation, Gio had no choice but to retreat, with Emma following close behind, leaving a shattered father and a stunned Brooklyn in their wake. The slap heard round Port Charles. The epicenter of the day's turmoil, however, was at the polling place, where the political and the personal violently collided. Laura Collins, the heart of Port Charles, had just finished exercising her civic duty when her world was upended by the news about her grandson. Commissioner Nathan West stopped by to assure her he had personally seen Rocco settled into a private room at the juvenile facility, a small mercy for which she was grateful. "This is Dalton's doing," Laura said to Elizabeth Baldwin, her voice tight with a grandmother's fear. He never mentioned any vandalism initially. He's manufactured this crisis. Liz offered comforting words about the PCPD's dedication, but Laura's attempt to reclaim a moment of normalcy by casting her vote was shattered when Professor Dalton himself strode into the room, a smug, triumphant look on his face. Difficult to protect your grandson from behind a mayor's desk now, isn't it, Laura? He gloated, gesturing to the polling stations. Once those votes are counted, you'll be just another private citizen. Laura faced him, her posture regal even in her distress. The votes haven't been counted yet, Professor. And I don't need a title to protect my family. Dalton sneered, pushing his luck. I suppose Rocco and Sonny can swap prison stories now. A family tradition. It was the final straw. The carefully constructed composure that had seen Laura through countless crises shattered. You manipulated this entire situation, she accused, her voice rising, drawing the attention of every voter in the room. I'm the victim here, Dalton proclaimed, playing to his impromptu audience, many of whom were now pulling out their phones to record the spectacle. No, you're not. Laura fired back, her finger jabbing toward him. You are a liar. He accused her of abusing her power to help her grandson, and she laid into him with everything she had. You are railroading an innocent teenager. But Dalton, a master manipulator, kept playing the crowd, looking around with a performative woundedness. Look at me. Laura shouted, her command echoing through the hall. When his eyes continued to dart around the room, dismissing her, something in Laura snapped. The politician, the diplomat, the peacemaker vanished, and in her place was a fierce, cornered lioness. Her hand flew through the air, connecting with his cheek in a sharp, stunning crack, the slap heard round Port Charles. The room fell into a dead, horrified silence. You are trying to frame my grandson for a crime he did not commit, she hissed, her face inches from his, her eyes blazing with a promise of war. And I promise you, that will not end well for you. It was only then that she followed Dalton's gaze and saw the forest of raised smartphones, their cameras silently recording her moment of ultimate maternal fury. The look of triumph on Dalton's face was unmistakable. He had gotten exactly what he wanted. Laura's face fell, the grim reality of her tactical error dawning on her. In her righteous anger, she may have just handed her enemy the weapon he needed to destroy her, and in doing so, seal her grandson's fate. The baptism by fire was complete, and the storm had only just begun.